Hey guys, tonight we are going to drift back in time, pushing through the heavy oak doors of history to experience a season that is both comfortingly familiar and alienatingly strange. We're going to spend Christmas in the Middle Ages, but we aren't just popping in for the turkey dinner. We are going to live through the cold, the waiting, and the bizarre rituals that defined the winter solstice for our ancestors. Picture a world lit only by tallow candles and hearth fires, where the silence of a snowy forest is heavy enough to crush you, and where the line between festive magic and genuine survival anxiety is razor thin. Honestly, looking at the hygiene standards and the lack of antibiotics, you probably wouldn't survive this holiday season without a serious bout of something unpleasant. But luckily, from the safety of your bed, you don't have to worry about that. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment letting me know where in the world you are listening from and what time it is. I love seeing the map fill up. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are standing in the doorway of a small, timber-framed cottage. The air is crisp, carrying that distinct metallic tang of impending snow, mixed with the ever-present medieval perfume of wood smoke and damp wool. But if you're expecting to hear sleigh bells or see a fat man in a red suit squeezing down the chimney, you're going to be disappointed. In fact, if you look at the calendar, assuming you could read one, which statistically speaking, you probably can't, you'd see that it is mid-November. The festive season has not begun. In fact, quite the opposite has happened. You have just entered the long, gray tunnel known as Advent, or as you know it in this era, St. Martin's Lent. The great feast of St. Martin on November 11th was the last hurrah, a gluttonous farewell to comfort, where you likely ate the last of the fresh beef and drank a concerning amount of ale. Now, the hangover has faded, and the reality of the 40 days has set in. You pull your woolen tunic tighter around your shoulders. It's itchy, scratching against your skin in a way that is annoying but strangely grounding, a constant reminder of the texture of your life. The Church has decreed that this period leading up to the Nativity is a time of penance, fasting, and somber reflection. It is effectively a winter version of Lent, designed to scrub your soul clean before the big day. This means your diet has just taken a tragic turn for the worse. You look at the hearth in the center of the room where an iron pot bubbles sluggishly. There is no bacon in there. There is no roast chicken. For the next 40 days, meat is strictly forbidden. You are now a vegetarian by mandate, though the definition of vegetarian in the Middle Ages is a bit fluid. You sit on a three-legged stool, the wood polished smooth by generations of trousers, and accept a wooden bowl of pottage. It's a thick, gray sludge of oats, peas, and perhaps some onions that have seen better days. It's warm, which is its primary virtue. As you eat, you try not to think about the salted herring that will likely be your main source of protein for the next 6 weeks. The herring is a staple, but after the 10th day of gnawing on a fish that has the texture of a roofing shingle and the salt content of the Dead Sea, you start to hallucinate about pork chops. There is a fascinating loophole here, though. Medieval biology is wonderfully creative when it comes to hungry stomachs. Since you cannot eat meat, you look for things that live in water. Fish are fine. But what about the beaver? You might hear the local priest argue that since the beaver has a scaly tail and spends most of its time in the river, it is, for all intents and purposes, a fish. Therefore, beaver tail is on the menu. There is also the bizarre, widely accepted theory of the barnacle goose. You might watch your neighbor nod sagely and explain that these geese do not hatch from eggs, but grow from barnacles on driftwood in the ocean. Since they are born of the sea, they are fish, not fowl, and can be eaten during the fast with a clear conscience. It's one of those convenient scientific inaccuracies that makes the long winter nights a little more bearable. The days are getting shorter, drastically so. This is the era before the Gregorian calendar adjustment, so the solstice feels like it is creeping up on you faster than it should. By 4 in the afternoon, the world is plunging into an ink-black darkness that modern city dwellers can scarcely imagine. You don't have streetlights. You don't have the ambient glow of a nearby strip mall. When the sun goes down, the world simply vanishes. You huddle closer to the fire, the only source of light in the cottage. The walls are made of wattle and daub, woven sticks plastered with mud, dung, and straw. They are surprisingly good at keeping the wind out, but the cold has a way of seeping through the floorboards, or rather, the packed earth floor. The cold in the medieval winter isn't just a temperature, it's a physical presence, a roommate that refuses to pay rent. It settles in your joints. You find yourself doing the peasant shuffle, a subtle, constant shifting of weight and rubbing of arms to keep the blood moving. Historians still argue whether the strict fasting rules of St. Martin's Lent were rigidly followed by every single peasant in the deepest countryside, or if this was mostly a performance for the nobility and the monasteries. Did the shepherd on the lonely hill really turn down a rabbit he caught in his snare just because the calendar said it was Advent? Probably not. But for you, in this village, under the watchful eye of the parish priest who knows everyone's business, you stick to the rules. You eat your oats, you eat your salted fish, you wait. The waiting is psychological as much as it is physical. The labor doesn't stop just because you're fasting. You still have to trudge out to the barn to check on the animals. The oxen need hay. The chickens need to be protected from foxes that are just as hungry as you are. You spend your days threshing grain in the barn, the rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack of the flail echoing the beating of your own heart. It is dusty, back-breaking work, and doing it on a stomach full of peas and piety is exhausting. But there is a strange beauty to this time too. Because the world is so dark and so quiet, the anticipation of Christmas builds a genuine tension. You aren't burned out by 3 months of Mariah Carey songs playing in every shop. You aren't stressed about buying 50 different plastic gifts. You are simply craving the return of the light. The church liturgy changes, the chants becoming more longing, more urgent. You hear the O antiphons, sung at Vespers, ancient pleas for a Savior to come and disperse the gloomy clouds of night. In the evenings, to save on candles, which are made of tallow and smell faintly of burning beef fat, you and your family sit, almost in the dark. This is the time for storytelling. You listen to the elders spin yarns about saints and monsters, their voices low and rumbly. You might do some mending by the dying embers of the fire, squinting to see the thread. It's a slow life, a bored life, perhaps, by modern dopamine-addicted standards. But your brainwaves are slowing down, syncing with the long, dormant rhythm of the earth outside. You feel a draft slice through a crack in the shutter, chilling the back of your neck. You pull your hood up. The concept of insulation is still a few centuries away, so you rely on layers. You are wearing a linen undertunic, a wool overtunic, and perhaps a hood or a cloak lined with rabbit fur if you've been lucky with your trapping. You look like a bundle of laundry that has gained sentience, but at least you are warmish. This 40-day tunnel is the price you pay for the party that is coming. The gloom makes the gold shine brighter. You know that at the end of this cold, hungry, fish-flavored road, there is a feast waiting. There is a Yule coming, a word that feels older than the church, smelling of pine needles and ancient bonfires. But for now, you just have to get through another Tuesday in December. You stir the pottage again, staring into the gray mush, and tell yourself that it builds character. Or at least, that's what you tell your stomach as it grumbles in protest, demanding a steak that is still 40 days away. You stare at the fire, watching the embers pulse like a slow, dying heartbeat. The 40 days of fasting are finally drawing to a close, and the energy in the village has shifted from grim endurance to a frantic, muscular preparation. It's Christmas Eve morning, and today you have a very specific, very heavy job to do. You aren't just decorating a tree, you are going to burn one. You step outside, and the air hits you like a slap from a wet towel, damp, freezing, and smelling of snow. You grab your axe. The handle is smooth hickory, polished by sweat and years of grip. You and a group of neighbors, Burley Thomas, Miller's son John, and a few others whose names are mostly grunts, head toward the edge of the forest. You are on a mission to fetch the Yule Log. Now, forget the cute little chocolate cake logs you see in modern bakeries. This is not a dessert. This is a massive, leviathan trunk of a tree. We are talking about the entire base of an oak or an ash tree, roots and all sometimes, dragged from the earth like a stubborn tooth. The tradition of the Yule Log is one of those deeply ancient rituals that the church sort of squinted at, shrugged, and decided to rebrand rather than ban. It has roots in the old pagan solstice celebrations, where the fire was meant to coax the sun back from the dead, but now you're told it represents the light of Christ warming the world. Either way, it's going to keep your toes from frostbite, so you don't argue theology. You trudge through the snow, your breath clouding in front of you. The forest is quiet, the trees standing like black skeletons against the gray sky. You find your target, a deadfall oak, massive and gnarled. This isn't just about firewood, it's about endurance. You wrap ropes around the trunk, thick hemp lines that bite into your palms even through your leather mittens. The hauling is brutal. There are no engines, no hydraulics, just physics and groaning. "Heave!" someone shouts, and you throw your weight forward, boots slipping in the mud and slush. The log moves inches. You grit your teeth. You can feel the strain in your lower back, the kind of ache that reminds you that physical therapy hasn't been invented yet. You drag this wooden beast out of the woods, down the lane, and towards the manor house or your own larger farmhouse. As you drag it, you have to be careful. There are superstitions attached to this log that are as heavy as the wood itself. You cannot drop it. If you drop the Yule log, it is considered spectacularly bad luck for the coming year. We're talking crops failing, cows going dry, and your roof leaking levels of bad luck. So, despite the burning in your shoulders, you grip that rope like your life depends on it. Historians still argue about the exact geographical spread of the Yule log tradition in the medieval period, whether it was more of a Germanic custom bleeding into England or a uniquely British evolution, but as you sweat through your tunic in the freezing air, the academic debate feels irrelevant. The log is real, and it is heavy. Once you finally wrestle the monster into the house, the real ceremony begins. You don't just toss it in the fireplace. That would be disrespectful. You have to maneuver it into the massive open hearth. In many homes, the Yule log is so big it acts as the backlog, sitting at the rear of the fire to burn slowly, day and night, for the entire 12 days of Christmas. But here's the quirky part. You can't just light it with a flint and steel. That would be too easy. Tradition dictates that the new Yule log must be lit with a fragment of last year's Yule log. Yes, someone in your household has been hoarding a charred, dusty piece of wood under their bed or in a cupboard for 365 days, saving it for this exact moment. It represents the continuity of life, the eternal cycle of the seasons. You watch as the old, blackened scrap is brought out like a holy relic. It is placed among the kindling under the massive new trunk. A flame is struck. You hold your breath. If the log catches fire on the first try, it's a good omen. If it smolders and goes out, you might as well pack it in, because next year is going to be a disaster. Thankfully, the kindling catches, the flames lick upward, and the old wood ignites the new. A cheer goes up, a rough, hearty sound from dry throats. The Yule log does more than just heat the room. It is practically a magical object. As it burns, you watch the sparks fly up the chimney. There's a belief that you can predict your fortune by reading the sparks, or that the ashes from the log, once cooled, can cure toothaches, protect the house from lightning, and even help your cows give births safely. It is a Swiss Army knife of superstition. You sit back on your heels, wiping sweat from your forehead, watching the fire take hold. The heat radiates outward, pushing back the damp chill that has lived in your bones since November. The sap in the wood hisses and pops, a sound that is infinitely more comforting than any modern white noise machine. But the ritual isn't over. Out comes the drinking. You don't just drink near the log, you drink to the log. A jug of ale or cider is passed around. You take a swig. It's rough, yeasty, and strong, and then, in a move that would horrify a modern safety inspector, you pour a libation of alcohol directly onto the burning wood. The fire flares up with a blue hiss, consuming the offering. It feels primal. You are feeding the fire, so the fire will feed you. For the next 12 days, this fire must not go out. It is the heart of the holiday. If the Yule log flickers and dies before 12th night, it is a sign that someone in the house will die within the year. No pressure. This means that for the next 2 weeks, you and your family will be tending this fire with the anxiety of a bomb disposal unit. Someone will always be watching it, poking it, whispering to it. But right now, as the flames roar to life, and the massive trunk begins to glow cherry red, you feel a profound sense of accomplishment. You have brought the sun indoors. You have conquered the winter dark with your own hands and a big stick. The smell of burning oak fills the room, rich and acrid, masking the smell of unwashed bodies and damp dogs. You settle onto a bench, your muscles twitching from the exertion. The light from the Yule log dances on the walls, throwing long, jumping shadows that look like festive spirits, or perhaps demons, depending on how much of that strong ale you've had. The hard work is done. The fire is lit. The pivot point of the year has been reached. You stretch your legs out toward the warmth, listening to the wind howl outside, powerless now against the fortress of heat you've built. With the massive Yule log now happily digesting itself in the hearth, throwing out a wall of heat that makes your face flush, you turn your attention to the rest of the house. It's still Christmas Eve, and the place looks drab. The stone walls are bare, the corners are shadowy, and frankly, the whole aesthetic is damp cave chic. It needs a makeover. It's time to bring the forest inside, but in a way that is less heavy lifting and more prickly rearranging. It's time to deck the halls. You grab a pair of shears, heavy iron things that look more like sheep shearing tools than gardening equipment, and head back out into the fading light. You are looking for the only things in the world that are still alive and green: holly and ivy. In the medieval mind, these plants are the power couple of winter flora. They aren't just pretty, they are symbols of the eternal struggle between male and female energies, which adds a weirdly gendered subtext to your interior design. Holly, with its rigid leaves and aggressive spikes, is considered masculine. Ivy, which is softer and clings to things, is considered feminine. The goal is to bring them both into the house in equal measure, to ensure peace between the master and mistress of the house for the coming year. If you bring in more holly, the man will rule the roost. If you bring in more ivy, the woman will wear the pants, or the kirtle, as it were. You carefully count your bundles to avoid domestic political incidents. You reach for a branch of holly. Ouch. You recoil, sucking a bead of blood from your thumb. The holly of the Middle Ages is not the domesticated, genetically smoothed over stuff of modern garden centers. This is wild, defensive, medieval holly. Its leaves are edged with spines sharp enough to puncture leather. Gathering it is less like flower arranging and more like wrestling a porcupine. But you persist, because the bright red berries are the only splash of color in a world that has been monochrome gray for weeks. But here is the catch: you have to be careful with those berries. You know, with the practical knowledge of a peasant who has seen too many accidents, that these berries are toxic. They won't kill a grown man instantly, but they will cause a violent purging that would ruin the festive mood. You have to keep them high up, away from the toddlers and the dogs. It's a decorative hazard, a beautiful poison that you willingly invite into your living room. You drag armfuls of the stuff back inside. There are no tinsel garlands, no glass baubles. You are using nature itself. You jam sprigs of holly into the crevices of the stone walls. You drape ivy over the mantelpiece, letting it trail down toward the fire, hoping it doesn't dry out and turn your house into a bonfire. You weave branches into wreaths, not for the front door, that's a Victorian invention, but to hang from the rafters or place on the table. There is also mistletoe to consider. This one is tricky. It's a parasite that grows on oak and apple trees, and it has a heavy druidic baggage that the church is still slightly uncomfortable with. In fact, many priests forbid mistletoe inside the church building itself because of its pagan fertility associations. But in your house, it's fair game. You hang a kissing bough, a spherical framework of hoops woven with greenery and apples, with a sprig of mistletoe dangling in the center. The rules of the kissing bough are specific. If a man catches a woman under it, he can claim a kiss. But for every kiss claimed, he must pluck one white berry from the mistletoe. When the berries are gone, the kissing has to stop. It's a primitive form of consent management via botany. You hang it near the door, noting that the white berries look like little pearls, or perhaps ghostly eyes watching the festivities. As you work, the smell of the house changes. The sharp, green scent of crushed leaves and sap mixes with the wood smoke. It smells like a forest floor, clean and wild. It masks the staleness of the winter confinement. It feels like you are building a green fortress against the death of winter outside. But you aren't just decorating for aesthetics, you are decorating for defense. Medieval people believed the world is teeming with invisible entities, goblins, elves, spirits, that are particularly active during the 12 days of Christmas. The holy nights are thin times, where the veil between worlds is porous. The prickly holly leaves are thought to catch evil spirits in their spikes, acting like a spiritual barbed wire. The strong scent of the evergreen confuses them. You place sprigs over the doorways and windows, sealing the house against the supernatural draft. Historians still argue about exactly how widespread the kissing bough was in the early Middle Ages versus the later periods, but the instinct to bring greenery indoors is universal. It is a desperate affirmation of life. You are looking at a dead branch and saying, "Look, this part is still green. We will be green again too." You step back to admire your handiwork. The room looks transformed. The flickering firelight catches the glossy leaves of the ivy and the blood-red pop of the holly berries. Shadows dance through the branches, making the walls seem to move and breathe. It's chaotic, messy, and alive. You have turned your home into a woodland bower. There is a sense of sanctuary now. The outside world is a hostile void of ice and darkness, but in here, surrounded by the smell of pine and the heat of the Yule log, you have created a pocket of survival. You brush the pine needles off your tunic, pulling a stray thorn out of your sleeve. Your hands are sticky with resin, your fingers pricked and sore, but the house is ready. You notice a spider crawling out of a bundle of ivy you just hung up. You let it be. In medieval folklore, spiders are often seen as lucky, or at least industrious little weavers connected to the Virgin Mary in some obscure legends. Plus, it's Christmas. Even the bugs deserve a warm night in. The transformation is psychological. An hour ago, this was just a cold room where you ate porridge. Now it is a hall. The greenery elevates the space, signaling to your brain that the ordinary rules of life are suspended. Work is ending. The feast is beginning. You take a deep breath of that sharp, green air. It clears your sinuses and wakes you up. The stage is set. The actors, you and your family, are ready. Now you just need to clean up the mess you made before the sun goes down completely. The house smells amazing, like a pine forest caught fire in a spice shop, but if you look down, the floor is a disaster. You have tracked in mud, snow, dead leaves, and bits of bark from the Yule log. In a modern house, you'd just grab a vacuum. In a medieval house, cleaning the floor is a construction project. It is late afternoon on Christmas Eve, and the sun is dipping dangerously close to the horizon. You are in a race against the light to finish the Christmas cleanup. Medieval floors, particularly in humbler homes, are often packed earth covered with rushes, dried reeds, straw, or grasses spread out to provide insulation and catch dirt. Over time, these rushes get nasty. They collect dropped food, spilled ale, dog hair, and fleas. So, the pre-Christmas ritual involves the Great Sweep. You grab a broom made of birch twigs bound to a hazel handle, a besom. It's scratchy and stiff. You start raking the old, stale rushes toward the door. It's a dusty, choking job. Clouds of gray particulate matter rise up, dancing in the shafts of light from the fire. You cough, wrapping a rag around your face. You are literally sweeping out the old year's filth. There is a superstition that you must not sweep dust out the front door on Christmas Eve, or you will sweep away your luck, or perhaps sweep away one of the ancestral spirits who has popped in for a visit. Instead, you sweep it into a pile in the corner or throw it into the back of the fire. Once the old rushes are gone, revealing the hard-packed dirt that looks like dark chocolate, you bring in the fresh winter herbs. This is the medieval version of Febreze. You scatter dried lavender, meadowsweet, and fresh straw. The scent hits you instantly, clean, floral, and grassy. It changes the entire atmosphere of the room. It feels renewed. But the cleaning isn't just about the floor. Everything has to be finished. The medieval Christmas operates on a strict stop-work order. Once the sun sets on Christmas Eve, no major labor is allowed for the next 12 days. This means the pressure right now is intense. You check the spinning wheel in the corner. You have to remove the drive band. If you leave a spinning wheel strung up over Christmas, the devil might come and spin on it at night, tangling your yarn and cursing your wool. You hide the distaff. You put away the loom. You cover the plow outside. You rush to the kitchen area. All the cooking utensils need to be scrubbed with sand and water. The pewter plates, if you're fancy, or the wooden trenchers need to be scraped clean. You are polishing the world, preparing it for a sacred pause. There is a frantic energy to this hour. The light is failing, blue and dim in the window squares. You are running around lighting the Christmas candles. These aren't your standard tallow dips. For Christmas, the chandler, or your own thrifty hoarding, has provided large, thick candles, sometimes made of beeswax if you can afford it. Beeswax smells like honey when it burns, a luxurious upgrade from the beef fat stink of tallow. You place them on the table in the window niches. You don't light them yet. That waits for the darkness. But they stand there like tall, wax soldiers ready for duty. You realize you haven't bathed. Now, medieval people didn't bathe daily, but they weren't permanently encrusted in filth either, especially before a high holy day. You haul a wooden tub in front of the fire, the warmest spot in the house. You heat water in the iron cauldron over the Yule Log. It takes forever. You fill the tub bucket by bucket. You strip down, shivering in the drafty room until you slide into the hot water. It's heaven. The heat soaks into your tired muscles, the ones aching from dragging the log and hauling the holly. You use a bit of soap made from ash and animal fat. It's harsh, but it works. You scrub away the Advent fasting grime, the soot, the stable smell. You are ritually purifying yourself. When you step out and towel off with a rough linen cloth, you feel like a new person. You put on your Sunday best, a clean tunic, fresh hose, maybe a belt with a slightly shiny brass buckle. The sun has officially set. The sky outside is a deep, bruising purple. The village bell begins to toll, a slow, rhythmic clanging that echoes across the snowy fields. It is the Angelus, signaling the end of the day, but tonight it signals the end of the fast. The St. Martin's Lent is over. You look around the room. The fresh rushes are green and springy underfoot. The holly and ivy gleam in the firelight. The tools of your labor are hidden away. The air smells of lavender, pine, and wood smoke. The chaos of the day has been swept into the corners. There is a moment of profound stillness. The frantic rushing is done. You can't do any more work even if you wanted to. The church forbids it. The neighbors would judge you, and frankly, you're exhausted. You sit on the bench, your clean hands resting on your clean knees. The fire pops. The dog sighs, curling up in the fresh straw. You feel a strange sensation, permission to rest. In a life defined by relentless, dawn to dusk agricultural labor, this mandated pause is the greatest gift of all. The 12 days have begun. You are clean, you are warm, and for the first time in weeks, you are allowed to just be. But don't get too comfortable. You can't sleep yet. The night is just starting. You have a long, cold walk ahead of you, and a service that is going to assault your senses in the best possible way. You stand up, grab your cloak, and prepare to head out into the dark. The bell is still ringing, calling you to the center of the village. It's time for midnight mass. You step out of your warm, lavender-scented cottage, and the cold hits you like a physical blow. It is pitch black. The concept of light pollution is centuries away. The only illumination comes from the stars, which look impossibly bright and sharp, like diamond dust scattered on black velvet, and the faint orange glow spilling from your neighbors' doorways. You can see your breath pluming in the air, a ghostly fog that freezes on your scarf. You join the stream of villagers moving toward the church, a silent procession of dark shapes huddled in wool cloaks. The snow crunches under your boots, a loud, satisfying crump, crump, crump that seems to echo in the utter silence of the winter night. You are heading to midnight mass, the spiritual climax of the season. In the medieval mind, this isn't just a church service, it is a cosmic event. You are walking into the moment when history splits in two, BC, turning into AD. As you get closer to the church, you see it glowing. The stained glass windows, usually dark and imposing, are lit from within, blazing with reds, blues, and golds, like jewels dropped in the snow. It looks like a lighthouse in a sea of darkness. You push through the heavy wooden doors and are instantly hit by a wall of sensory overload. First, the heat. After the biting cold outside, the interior of the church is stiflingly warm, heated by the press of hundreds of bodies and thousands of candles. Then, the smell. It is a thick, heady cocktail of beeswax, damp wool, unwashed humanity, and the sharp, sweet tang of frankincense. The incense smoke hangs in the air in blue ribbons, catching the light, making the whole space look dreamlike and hazy. And the light, you are used to a world lit by a single rushlight or the embers of a fire. This is blinding. Every altar, every niche, every ledge is covered in candles. The rood screen, the wooden partition separating the nave from the altar, is ablaze with tapers. The gold leaf on the statues glitters. The silverware on the altar sparkles. For a peasant whose eyes are adapted to the gray scale of winter, this is dazzling. It's the medieval equivalent of walking into Times Square. You find a place to stand in the nave. There are no pews. Pews are a later Protestant invention for people who like to sit and listen to long sermons. In the medieval Catholic Mass, you stand, you kneel, you shuffle. The floor is covered in hay or rushes to keep your knees from freezing on the stone, but it's still hard. You are shoulder to shoulder with the entire village. The blacksmith is there, smelling of iron and sweat. The baker is there, flour still dusting his eyebrows. The Lord and his family are up front, in their own private box or stalls, wearing velvets that catch the candlelight. The service begins. It is entirely in Latin. You don't speak Latin. Most of the people around you don't speak Latin. But that doesn't matter. You know the rhythm. You know the cues. The priest, wearing vestments of white and gold, the colors of celebration, moves through the ritual like a dancer. He chants, his voice echoing off the high stone vaults. Gloria in excelsis Deo. The choir, boys with voices like flint sparks, responds. The sound is physically powerful, vibrating in your chest. This is the Mass of the Angels. There are actually 3 Masses on Christmas Day, but this one, in the deepest part of the night, is the most mystical. It celebrates the eternal birth of the Son from the Father. You watch the elevation of the host, the round white wafer held up in the golden monstrance. A bell rings, ting, ting, ting. In the silence that follows, amidst the smoke and the gold, you are meant to feel a sense of awe that transcends your daily grind of mud and turnips. But let's be real, you're also exhausted. It's 1 o'clock a.m. You've been fasting for weeks. The air is thick and sleep-inducing. You see a neighbor nodding off, jerking awake when his chin hits his chest. You might stifle a yawn yourself. It's a long service. There's a lot of chanting. Historians still argue about how pious the average medieval peasant really was. Were they deeply following the theology, or just there for the spectacle and the community? Probably a mix of both. You are there because everyone is there. To miss midnight mass would be social suicide and possibly heresy. Suddenly, the tone changes. The priest reads the Gospel of Luke. Even in Latin, you know this part. The shepherds, the angels, the manger. In some churches, they might act it out. A crib or creche has been set up, a scene of the nativity with wooden figures, or sometimes real people frozen in place. It's visual storytelling for an illiterate audience. You stare at the baby Jesus doll lying in the straw. It looks peaceful. Then comes the Pax, the kiss of peace. This is where it gets socially awkward. You have to turn to your neighbor and offer a sign of peace. Usually, this involves kissing a Pax board, a flat piece of wood or metal with a holy image on it that is passed through the crowd. You kiss it, wipe it, hopefully, and pass it on. It's a moment of communal bonding, a ceasefire in whatever village feuds are currently simmering. You catch the eye of the man whose goat ate your cabbages last summer. You nod, he nods, for tonight you are cool. As the Mass ends, the doors are thrown open. You spill back out into the night, but the darkness feels different now. The service has charged you up. You feel cleansed, dazzled, and vibrating with the residual energy of the chant. The bell tower erupts again, a joyous, chaotic pealing that rings out across the valley, telling the next village and the next that Christ is born. But your stomach gives a loud, treacherous growl. The spiritual feeding is done. Now your body remembers that it hasn't seen meat in 40 days. The St. Martin's Lent is officially, technically over. The fast is broken. You walk home faster than you walked there. The anticipation is palpable. You can almost smell the roasting meat before you even get inside. The solemnity of the church fades, replaced by a primal hunger. You are about to engage in one of the most satisfying breakfasts of your life. The silence of the walk home is broken by laughter, by neighbors wishing each other good Yule. You reach your cottage. The Yule log is still burning, a steady, comforting red eye in the dark room. You rub your hands together, warming them over the flames. The sensory overload of the church, the gold, the incense, the Latin, lingers in your mind like a vivid dream, but the smell of the glazing ham or bacon that your wife or mother is preparing pulls you back to earth. You sit down. The table is set. It's 2 or 3 in the morning. This is technically breakfast, but it's going to be a feast. You loosen your belt. You pick up your knife. The holy night is over. The holiday, the holy day, has truly begun. The sun hasn't even thought about rising yet, but your stomach thinks it's noon. It is the dark, chilly hour just before dawn on Christmas morning, and you are sitting at the long trestle table in the main hut of the manor, or perhaps your own crowded farmhouse, depending on your status. The air is thick with anticipation and the scent of roasting meat, a smell that after 40 days of salted fish hits your brain like a narcotic. You are about to partake in the boar's head breakfast. Now, you might think of breakfast as oatmeal or maybe some toast. In the Middle Ages, on Christmas morning, breakfast is a contact sport. The centerpiece of this meal is not a turkey. It is the severed, roasted, and reconstructed head of a wild boar. The doors to the kitchen swing open, and a procession begins. This isn't just food delivery, it's a parade. Musicians lead the way, piping a jaunty tune or beating a rhythm on a drum. Behind them comes the steward, looking very self-important, and then, held high on a silver or pewter platter, comes the beast. The boar's head is a masterpiece of culinary taxidermy. It has been skinned, the meat cooked, and then the skin carefully replaced. It is glazed until it shines like dark amber. Its mouth is propped open with a lemon or an apple, a splash of bright color in the torchlight. But the piece de resistance is the fire. Yes, in some wealthier households, they dip the snout or the tusks in alcohol and set them alight. The boar enters the room breathing fire, a dragon defeated and served up for your pleasure. The crowd cheers, you cheer. It's grotesque, it's magnificent, it's metal as hell. Why a boar? Well, like most things in the Middle Ages, it's a mashup of pagan tradition and Christian branding. The wild boar was a symbol of the Old Norse fertility god, Freyr, and eating it was a way of absorbing its strength and ensuring a good harvest. The church, in its infinite marketing wisdom, rebranded the boar as a symbol of the sins of the flesh, which Christ, and by extension, you, by eating it, has conquered. So, as you slice into that cheek meat, you are theoretically engaging in a theological victory over sin. Practically, you are just enjoying the bacon. The platter is set down in front of the lord of the manor at the high table. He gets the first slice, naturally. He takes his dagger. Everyone brings their own knife to the table. Forks are still considered a weird Italian affectation, and carves a piece of the rich, fatty meat. Then it's your turn. The servants circulate with platters of the meat. You grab a chunk. The taste is intense, gamey, rich, sweet with the glaze, and smoky. It melts on your tongue. After weeks of lentil pottage and dry bread, the explosion of fat and salt is almost overwhelming. You wash it down with a horn of ale that is stronger than the usual small beer you drink for breakfast. It's Christmas ale, brewed specifically for this season, thick and spiced. But the boar isn't alone. The table is groaning under side dishes. There is frumenty, a kind of wheat porridge that has been leveled up with milk, eggs, cinnamon, and maybe even saffron if the Lord is showing off. Saffron is worth its weight in gold, literally, so if your porridge is yellow, you know the budget was blown. There are pies, coffins of pastry filled with minced meat, fruits, and spices. These aren't the sweet mince pies of today. They are savory sweet monstrosities containing beef, suet, dried plums, and cloves. The pastry shell is thick and hard, designed mostly to hold the contents, not necessarily to be eaten, but you eat it anyway because you're starving. There is also humble pie. This is where the term humble pie comes from. It's made from the umbles, the heart, liver, lungs, and kidneys of the deer or boar. It's the organ meat, the cheap cuts. If you are sitting below the salt, more on that later, this might be your main course. It's earthy and iron-rich. You dip your bread into the gravy, soaking up every drop. As you eat, you look around. The hall is decked with the holly and ivy you gathered. The Yule Log is roaring in the hearth, throwing out enough heat to make the tallow candles soften and droop. The dogs are under the table, waiting for bones. It is a scene of chaotic abundance. There's a carol being sung, not Silent Night. That's centuries away. They are singing the Boar's Head Carol, the boar's head in hand, bare eye, bedecked with bays and rosemary, and I pray you, my masters, be merry. The tune is repetitive, hypnotic. You find yourself humming along, tapping your knife on the table. This meal is a stark contrast to the darkness outside. The sun is finally up now, a pale, watery disk hanging low in the sky, casting long blue shadows across the snow, but inside it feels like a different world. The noise level is rising as the ale flows. People are laughing, shouting across the tables. The solemnity of the midnight mass is gone, replaced by the rowdy relief of survival. You made it through the fast. You made it through the dark. You are eating fire-breathing pork. Historians still argue about the exact nutritional content of these feasts versus the daily peasant diet, but the psychological impact is undeniable. This is a caloric bomb designed to help you survive the next 2 months of freezing temperatures. You are packing on winter insulation. You take a bite of mustard. Mustard is the ketchup of the Middle Ages, slathered on everything to mask the taste of salted or slightly turned meat. It clears your sinuses instantly, making your eyes water. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. Napkins are for the rich. There is a sense of communal gluttony here. In a world of scarcity, this deliberate waste, the fire, the spices, the sheer volume of food, is a power move. It says, we are still here. We have plenty. It's a lie of course. February is going to be lean and miserable. But for today, you pretend that the harvest was endless and the winter is just a backdrop for the party. You lean back, feeling the heavy, comfortable weight of the meal in your stomach. The firelight flickers on the greasy faces of your neighbors. Everyone looks slightly drunk and very happy. The boar's head has been reduced to a skull, its job done. The apple in its mouth is roasted and shriveled. But the day is just starting. This was only breakfast. There is a hierarchy to navigate, games to play, and a lot more eating to do. You burp, a compliment to the chef in this era, and reach for the ale jug again. The 12 days have kicked off with a bang, or rather, a sizzle. You settle in, ready to ride the wave of medieval festivity, grateful that for at least one day, the wolf is not at the door, or if he is, he's been roasted and served with applesauce. The boar's head breakfast has settled into a comfortable heaviness in your stomach, but now the real social game begins. It is midday on Christmas Day, and the great hall is being set for the main feast. If you thought the morning meal was a free-for-all, you were wrong. The medieval Christmas dinner is not a buffet. It is a minefield of etiquette, status, and potential humiliation. You are about to navigate the treacherous geography of the Great Hall. You stand near the entrance, wiping your boots on the rushes. The hall is the heart of the manor, a cavernous space with a high timber roof that disappears into smoke and shadows. At the far end, raised on a dais like a stage, is the high table. This is where the VIPs sit: the lord, the lady, the bishop, and maybe a visiting knight who looks like he's killed more people than he's had hot meals. They sit in high-backed chairs, facing the room, watching you. Extending down the length of the hall, perpendicular to the dais, are the long trestle tables for everyone else. This is where you belong, but you can't just grab a seat near the fire because you're cold. Oh no, seating is assigned by the marshal or the steward, men with big sticks and zero patience for peasants who don't know their place. You scan the tables for the most important object in the room: the salt cellar. This isn't a plastic shaker. It is a massive, ornate vessel, often made of silver or pewter, shaped like a ship, a castle, or a giant goblet. It sits in the middle of the principal table. It is the dividing line of society. If you sit above the salt, between the cellar and the lord, you are somebody. You get the good wine, the fresh meat, and the spices. If you sit below the salt, down towards the drafty door where the dogs are fighting, you are a nobody. You get the dregs of the ale, the coarser bread, and the cuts of meat that require vigorous chewing. You spot your place, definitely below the salt, way below. You are practically in a different zip code from the salt. You squeeze onto a bench next to a miller who smells of old flour and yeast. Space is tight. Personal space is a concept for the 21st century. Here you are packed in thigh to thigh. You have to climb over the bench to sit down, a maneuver that requires a surprising amount of agility if you don't want to kick a tankard of ale into someone's lap. The table setting is minimal. There are no plates as you know them. Instead, you have a trencher. This is a thick, stale slab of 4-day-old bread cut into a square. It acts as your edible plate. It absorbs the gravy and juices. If you are very hungry, you eat the trencher at the end of the meal. If you are wealthy or polite, you leave the soggy, gravy-soaked bread to be collected and given to the poor or the dogs. Since you are the poor in this scenario, you'll probably eat it. You pull out your personal knife. Everyone carries one. It's a tool, a weapon, and cutlery all in one. You verify that it's sharp. Using your neighbor's knife is a massive faux pas. There are no forks. Forks are considered devilish by some preachers. Why do you need artificial fingers when God gave you perfectly good ones? You do, however, have a spoon for the pottage. Now, the hierarchy isn't just about where you sit, it's about how you act. You are terrified of breaking the books of courtesy. These are mental rules drilled into you. Do not pick your teeth with your knife. Do not spit on the table, spit on the floor like a gentleman. Do not pet the dogs while eating. Hands are greasy enough. Do not dip your meat into the salt cellar. Use your knife to take a pinch out. And for the love of St. Nicholas, do not blow your nose on the tablecloth. Use your fingers and wipe them on your tunic or use your sleeve. The steward prowls the hall. He holds a white wand of office, which he uses to direct the servers and occasionally whack people who are being too rowdy. He is the bouncer of the Christmas feast. You keep your head down, trying to look festive but invisible. You don't want to catch his eye. You've heard stories of people being ejected into the snow for laughing too loudly or grabbing a dish before the Lord has been served. The service begins. It follows a strict order. The pantler brings the bread. The butler brings the ale. The carver stands at the high table, wielding a knife with the surgical precision of a doctor. He slices the meat for the Lord, holding it up on the knife tip, a assay to prove it's not poisoned. Poison is a genuine concern at the high table, giving the meal a spicy undertone of paranoia that you, down in the cheap seats, don't have to worry about. Nobody is wasting good arsenic on a peasant. You watch the food travel down the hall. By the time the platter reaches you, the best cuts, the wings, the thighs, are gone. You are left with the feet, the necks, the weird bits. But you take them gratefully. This is the mess system. You share a platter and a cup with your messmate, the person sitting next to you. You have to coordinate your drinking and eating. You wipe the rim of the cup before passing it back. It's an intimate, enforced bonding. You hope the miller doesn't have a cold. Historians still argue about whether these feasts were rigid, silent affairs or raucous parties. The truth is likely a bell curve, stiff and formal at the start, descending into chaos as the ale flows. Right now, it's the formal phase. The Lord stands to give a toast. You scramble to your feet, knocking your knees against the trestle table. "Wassail," he shouts. "Drink ale," you shout back, a Saxon exchange that has survived the Norman conquest. The atmosphere is tense, but electric. You are physically close to power. The Lord is right there. In a world without TV or social media, seeing your ruler eating a chicken leg is a major celebrity sighting. You watch him laugh. You watch him whisper to the bishop. You analyze his mood. Is he happy? A happy Lord means a safe winter. A grumpy Lord means higher taxes. You notice the upholstery on the walls behind the high table. They have hung tapestries to stop the drafts. Down at your end, the walls are bare stone, sweating with condensation. You shiver, the fire is roaring, but the heat doesn't quite reach below the salt. You are caught between the freezing door and the boiling hearth, trapped in a zone of thermal confusion. But as the first round of ale hits your empty stomach, the anxiety loosens. You settle into your slot in the machine. You are a cog in the feudal wheel, sitting exactly where God and the steward intended you to sit. You dip your face into your cup, hiding a smile. You made it inside. You have a seat. You have a knife. And looking at the massive pies being carried in by the servants, you know that for the next few hours, status doesn't matter as much as stomach capacity. You prepare to defend your trencher against the miller's wandering elbow. The feast is on. The hierarchy of the great hall has been established. The toast has been drunk, and now the servants are flooding the room like a culinary army. You are about to witness, and hopefully taste, food that defies modern logic. We aren't talking about roast potatoes and cranberry sauce. The medieval Christmas feast is a theater of the absurd, where the goal isn't just flavor, but shock and awe. You watch as a team of 4 servants struggles under the weight of a massive platter. A hush falls over the room. It's a peacock, but it hasn't been plucked. Through a painstaking process that would make a modern chef quit on the spot, the bird was skinned, roasted, and then dressed back up in its own feathers. Its beak is gilded with real gold leaf. Its tail is fanned out in a shimmering, iridescent display. It looks alive. It looks arrogant. It looks completely inedible. And honestly, It kind of is. Peacock meat is tough, stringy, and tastes a bit like angry turkey, but that doesn't matter. You don't eat the peacock for the protein, you eat it for the flex. It is a symbol of immortality and royalty. As it passes your table, heading for the high table, obviously, you catch a whiff of it. It doesn't smell like roast bird. It smells like a perfume factory. It has been stuffed with spices, cloves, ginger, cinnamon, nutmeg, worth more than your entire house. But if the peacock is too highbrow, the next dish is pure Frankenstein. It's the cockatrice. You stare at it, trying to figure out what animal you are looking at. The front half is a pig. The back half is a capon, a rooster. They have been sewn together in the middle to create a mythical beast, then roasted. It looks like a transporter accident from Star Trek. It is disturbing, hilarious, and deeply impressive. This is solstice science, a playful rebellion against the laws of nature. Finally, the platters reach your zone below the salt. You don't get the peacock breast, but you do get the pies. And oh, the pies. These are great pies, the size of wagon wheels. You slice into the thick, coffin-like crust. Inside is a chaotic jumble of meats, beef tongues, diced venison, chicken, eggs, and dried fruits like currants and dates. The flavor profile is sour, sweet, savory, spicy. There is no distinction between dinner and dessert here. Sugar is a rare spice, so sweetness is used to preserve and enhance meat, not just for cake. You take a bite. It's dense, it's heavy. It tastes like Christmas concentrated into a solid brick. The spices, pepper, cubeb, grains of paradise, tingle on your tongue. In an era before refrigeration, spices are used to mask the taste of aging meat, but also to show off wealth. Even a peasant feast will stretch the budget for a pinch of pepper. Then there is the swan. Only the royalty and the highest nobility are legally allowed to own or eat swans. If you are lucky, really lucky, the Lord might send a portion of swan down to the lower tables as a gesture of benevolence. You watch it arrive. The swan, like the peacock, is often served refeathered. The meat is dark and oily. Historians still argue about whether people actually liked swan or just endured it because it was fancy. You chew it thoughtfully. It tastes like mud and elitism. But the real MVP of the table is the vegetables, or rather, the lack of them. You won't find a crisp green salad here. Raw vegetables are considered unhealthy, liable to cause wind and imbalance your humors. Everything is cooked to death. You get leeks seethed in milk, which are basically dissolved into a white slime. You get cabbage that has been boiled for 3 hours until it surrenders. It's mushy, comfort food, easy to digest after the heavy meats. You wash it all down with lamb's wool. No, not fabric. It's a drink. Hot ale, spiced, with roasted crab apples floating in it. The apples explode in the heat, creating a white, woolly foam on top. It's sweet, tart, and dangerously drinkable. You dip your face into the foam, wiping the wool off your upper lip. It warms you all the way down to your toes, which are currently freezing on the rush-covered floor. There are subtleties arriving at the high table now. These are sculptures made of sugar paste and marzipan, almond paste. They aren't just food, they are political cartoons. One looks like a castle, another looks like St. George killing a dragon. Sometimes they have little banners with mottos on them. You squint to see them from your distance. You won't get to eat these. They are for looking, not touching. They are the medieval equivalent of an ice sculpture, but stickier. As you eat, you engage in the communal etiquette of the mess. You share your trencher with the miller. He offers you a choice piece of gristle. You offer him a scoop of pottage. You are bonding over calories. The noise in the hall is deafening. Dogs barking, people shouting for more ale, the musicians playing a lute song that nobody is listening to. Suddenly, a servant drops a platter of glazed turnips. Crash. The hall goes silent. The steward marches over. You hold your breath. Is the servant going to be flogged? Fired? The lord at the high table laughs. He waves a hand. It's Christmas. The tension breaks. The servant scrambles to pick up the turnips. 5-second rule applies, or rather, 5-minute rule. The dogs rush in to help. Chaos resumes. You are stuffed. You have eaten more meat in 1 hour than you usually eat in a month. Your trencher is soaked through with gravy, dissolving into a delicious sludge. You tear off a piece of the bread plate and eat it. It is the best part of the meal, salty, meaty, carb-heavy bliss. But you can't linger in a food coma. The meal is just the fuel. The entertainment is about to start. The doors burst open with a bang that makes you jump and spill your lamb's wool. The air changes. The polite-ish dining is over. The interludes are here. The quiet, holy night of the Nativity is about to get weird, loud, and mask-wearing. You wipe the grease off your chin and turn around on your bench. The mummers have arrived. The heavy oak doors of the great hall slam open, banging against the stone walls with a violence that makes the dogs bark and the diners jump. A draft of freezing air swirls in, instantly warring with the heat of the fire, but no one cares about the cold. All eyes are on the figures storming into the room. They are the mummers. Now, forget the polite Christmas carolers of the modern suburbs. These guys are not here to sing jingle bells. They are here to unsettle you. They are dressed in strange, motley costumes made of rags, strips of ribbon, and old sacks. Their faces are the worst part. They are blackened with soot or hidden behind grotesque masks made of wood and leather. Some have animal heads, goats, donkeys, or twisted, grinning demons. They look like a nightmare that has escaped from the forest. They don't speak. That's the rule. Mumming, from the word mum, meaning silent, is a pantomime. They stomp into the center of the hall, pushing aside the benches, clearing a space in the rushes. The musicians strike up a discordant, rhythmic beat on a drum. The mummers begin to dance. It's not a graceful ballet. It's a stomping, whirling, chaotic performance. They enact a silent play, usually a variation of the St. George and the Dragon story, but warped by centuries of folk tradition. One figure, dressed in makeshift armor, fights a monster made of two men under a blanket with a snapping wooden jaw. They swing wooden swords at each other with genuine force. Thwack, crack. The crowd cheers. The violence is stylized but visceral. Then, inevitably, one of the characters dies. He falls to the floor with a dramatic thud. The room goes quiet. This is the crucial part of the ritual. A doctor character enters, wearing a ridiculous hat and carrying a bag of medicines, usually a bottle of wine or some absurd prop. He performs a mock surgery or administers a magic potion. The dead man springs back to life. It's a resurrection play. In the dead of winter, when the earth itself seems dead, you are watching a ritual enactment of life returning. It's pagan at its core, wrapped in thin Christian paper. You cheer loudly as the dead man jumps up. It's a promise that the sun will come back, that the wheat will grow again. But the mummers aren't just actors, they are agents of chaos. They move into the crowd. A man with a goat mask leans over your table, staring at you with hollow wooden eyes. He doesn't say a word. He holds out a hand or a bowl. You know what to do. You have to give him something. A coin, a piece of pie, a drink of ale. If you refuse, it's bad luck. Or worse, they might trash your house. Mummers operate on a socially sanctioned extortion model. You pour some of your ale into his bowl. He nods, a jerky, bird-like motion, and moves on to the miller. There is a thrill of fear mixed with the fun, because they are masked. They are anonymous. That anonymity gives them power. This could be your neighbor, your brother, or a total stranger. Behind the mask, the strict social hierarchy dissolves. A peasant can demand a drink from a lord. A servant can mock a master. For this brief moment, the world is upside down. Historians still argue about the origins of mumming, whether it comes from the Roman Saturnalia or Celtic traditions. But in the moment, you don't care about the footnotes. You are just trying not to spill your drink as a bear, a man in a fur rug, lumbers past, roaring at the children. Then they invite the audience to join in. This is the mumming dance. You are pulled up from your bench. You grab the hand of a stranger. You are spinning in a circle, the room blurring into a smear of firelight, holly, and terrifying masks. The music gets faster. The air is thick with sweat and smoke. It's disorienting. It's ecstatic. You are part of the tribe, stomping the floor to wake up the sleeping earth. But there is an edge to it. Mummers were often associated with trouble. In some years, kings or mayors banned mumming because it was a perfect cover for assassins or thieves. Who killed the Duke? I don't know. It was a guy in a goat mask. The danger is real. You keep one hand on your belt pouch, just in case. Suddenly, the music stops. The play is over. The mummers bow, a mockingly deep, exaggerated bow, and then, just as quickly as they arrived, they storm out. The doors slam shut. The cold draft is cut off. The silence that follows is ringing. The energy in the room has shifted. The solemn, hierarchical dinner has been shattered by this burst of wild folk energy. You sit back down, breathless, your heart racing. You look at the miller. He looks at you. You both grin. "Did you see the doctor's hat?" he asks. You nod. It was funny, but it was also weird. The mummers have served their purpose. They have broken the ice, metaphorically and almost literally. They have reminded you that outside the warm, orderly manor, there is a wild, unpredictable world, and they have brought the gift of misrule, the idea that for the next 12 days, the rules are going to be a little flexible. You finish your ale. It tastes flat now compared to the adrenaline spike you just had. The servants are clearing the tables, throwing the trenchers to the dogs. The serious eating is done. The serious play is done. Now, the evening settles into a gambling, drinking, storytelling vibe. But first, there is the matter of the gifts. You might think the gifts happen on Christmas morning, but you'd be wrong. The medieval gift exchange is a complex web of patronage and bribery, and it's about to get awkward. The mummers have vanished back into the snowy night, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than before. The air is still thick with the smell of their unwashed costumes and the adrenaline of their performance, but the energy in the great hall has shifted from chaotic to transactional. It is time for the exchange of gifts. Now, You need to completely delete the modern image of Christmas morning, the ripping of wrapping paper, the surprise of a new gadget, the sentimental, it's the thought that counts attitude. In the Middle Ages, the thought does not count, the value counts, the status counts. Gift giving is not an act of love. It is a complex, high-stakes game of feudal poker. You sit on your bench, nervously clutching the small bundle you brought. In this era, the major gift exchange traditionally happens on New Year's Day, a holdover from the Roman custom of Strenae, but the entire 12 days is a fluid zone of giving and taking. And the direction of the gifts is strictly regulated by gravity. Gifts flow up to the powerful, and patronage flows down to the powerless. You are one of the powerless. Your role today is to pay tribute. You watch as a tenant farmer approaches the high table. He looks terrified. He is carrying a gift for the Lord. It's a capon, a castrated rooster, plump and fatty. Or perhaps it's a basket of eggs, or a special white loaf of bread. Is this a heartfelt present? No, it's essentially a bonus rent. It is a physical reminder that he lives on the Lord's land and is very, very sorry for existing. The Lord nods, his steward accepts the chicken, and the farmer scuttles away, relieved he wasn't yelled at. When it's your turn, you might present something similar. Maybe a pair of polished carved wooden spoons you made by the fire during Advent. You offer them up. The steward takes them with a look of mild disinterest. You have fulfilled your social contract. You have acknowledged the hierarchy. But then, the flow reverses. The Lord gives down, and this is where it gets interesting. The Lord doesn't give you a chicken. That would be insulting. You have chickens. He gives you status. He gives you livery. The word delivery comes from this custom. The Lord delivers clothes to his household. If you are a permanent member of the staff or a favored peasant, you might receive a set of robes or a tunic in the Lord's colors. This is a big deal. Cloth is expensive. A good wool tunic might cost months of wages. By giving you this, he is clothing you, warming you, but he is also branding you. When you wear that blue and tawny tunic, everyone in the village knows who owns you. You are walking advertising. You watch as the higher-ranking servants receive their gifts. It's a public performance. The steward gets a robe lined with rabbit fur. The huntsman gets a new leather belt with silver studs. The crowd murmurs in approval. The quality of the gift reflects the generosity of the giver. A stingy lord who gives threadbare robes is a disgrace, and poets will write mean verses about him. A generous lord is a powerful lord. For the royalty, this escalates into madness. If we were at the king's court right now, the gifts would be mind-boggling. King Henry III once gave a live polar bear to the King of France, or received one. The logistics were a nightmare either way. There are records of kings giving gold cups filled with coins, jeweled brooches in the shape of falcons, and entire estates. But there is a quirky, lesser-known category of gift that is popular among the wealthy: the pomatum, or pomander. You might see the lady of the manor holding a strange round object to her nose. It's an orange, a rare exotic fruit imported from the south, studded with dried cloves until it looks like a mace. It smells incredible, a mixture of citrus and spice that cuts through the stench of the medieval hall. It is a luxury air freshener, a gift that says, I am rich enough to smell good. There is also the puzzle jug. You might see the squires giggling over a ceramic pitcher with holes in the neck. The challenge is to drink the wine without spilling it all over yourself. You have to cover the right holes with your fingers and suck from a hidden spout. It's a medieval party trick, a gift designed to make the recipient look foolish, which passes for high comedy in the 14th century. Historians still argue about the extent of sentimental gift-giving among the peasantry. Did a father carve a doll for his daughter? Did a husband buy a ribbon for his wife? The records are silent because nobody wrote down what peasants did. Most likely, yes, these small, intimate exchanges happened, hidden from the public spectacle of the Great Hall. But officially, the season is about reinforcing the social pyramid. As the evening wears on, you wait for the Christmas box. This is the ancestor of Boxing Day. The Lord's steward might circulate with a clay pot or a wooden box. Coins are dropped in, silver pennies, maybe a groat if times are good. This box is then smashed or opened, traditionally on St. Stephen's Day, December 26th, and the contents divided among the servants. It is your annual bonus. You listen to the clink of the coins. That sound is more festive to you than any carol. It means you can buy salt. It means you can buy new shoes. There is a palpable anxiety in the room, though, the counter gift. If someone equals your status and gives you a gift, you are socially obligated to give something of equal or slightly greater value back. If you fail, you lose face. You watch two merchants exchanging gloves. Gloves are a classic gift, symbolizing trust and the hand of friendship. One pair has gold stitching, the other is plain leather. The man with the plain leather gloves looks mortified. He has lost the duel. You wrap your new or slightly used tunic around yourself. It's heavy wool, smelling faintly of the Lord's lavender storage chest. It scratches your neck, but it's warm. You feel a strange mix of gratitude and submission. You have been fed. You have been entertained. You have been clothed. In exchange, you have given your labor, your loyalty, and your best chicken. It is a transaction, cold and simple, but in a world where winter can kill you, having a patron is a survival strategy. You stroke the rough fabric of the sleeve. You are part of the family now, in the widest, strictly legal sense of the word. The Lord stands up and yawns. The signal is given. The formal part of the day is winding down. The gifts have been logged, the debts acknowledged. The étrennes, the New Year Christmas gifts, are secured. But the night isn't over. The church has had its turn, midnight mass. The stomach has had its turn, the feast. The social hierarchy has had its turn, the gifts. Now, it's time for the pure, unadulterated weirdness of medieval religion to take the stage again. You hear a high-pitched, cracking voice from the back of the hall. It sounds like a child, but he is shouting orders with the authority of a bishop. The crowd parts. You crane your neck to see. It's a small boy, dressed in miniature episcopal robes, holding a staff that is twice as tall as he is. He is marching toward the high table, and the actual bishop is stepping aside to let him pass. You are about to witness the world turn completely upside down. The feast of the boy bishop has begun. You stare, blinking in the torchlight, trying to process the visual contradiction unfolding in front of you. The Great Hall, usually a place of rigid, ironclad hierarchy, where you wouldn't dare sneeze without permission from a superior, has just been hijacked by a 12-year-old. This isn't a prank. Well, it is a prank, but it is a prank sanctioned by the Holy Mother Church, authorized by the bishop, and treated with deadly seriousness by everyone in the room. You are witnessing the reign of the boy bishop, or episcopus puerorum in the Latin you don't understand. The boy, a chorister with a face full of freckles and a voice that hasn't yet decided if it wants to be a soprano or a baritone, is wearing full episcopal vestments. He has a mitre on his head, the tall, pointed hat of a bishop, but since it was sized for a grown man with a large head and an even larger ego, it keeps sliding down over the boy's ears. He has to keep tilting his head back to see, looking down his nose at the crowd in a way that accidentally mimics the haughty expression of the real bishop perfectly. He holds a crozier, the shepherd's crook, in one hand. It is heavy, made of silver and gold, and you can see his knuckles turning white as he struggles to keep it upright. If he drops it, the spell breaks. But for now, he is the supreme religious authority in the parish. The actual bishop? You spot him standing off to the side, wearing the simple robes of a lowly clerk. He is bowing to the boy. He is deferring to the boy. He looks almost relieved to be off the hook for a few days. This tradition usually kicks off on St. Nicholas's Day, December 6th, and runs all the way through to Holy Innocents' Day, December 28th. It is the theological physicalization of the scripture, the last shall be first, and the first last. But to you, standing in the drafty nave of the church or the crowded hall, it feels like the world has slipped off its axis. You follow the procession into the church for a special service. The boy bishop marches up the aisle. His court consists of other choir boys dressed as priests and canons. They are giggling, poking each other in the ribs when they think no one is looking, but when they reach the altar, they snap into character. The service begins. The boy intones the prayers. His voice is high and piping, bouncing off the stone vaults where usually a deep, booming bass would resonate. There is something surreal about hearing the solemn Latin liturgy coming from a mouth that was probably chewing on a sweetmeat 5 minutes ago. Then comes the sermon. This is the main event. The boy bishop climbs into the pulpit. You crane your neck to see him. He's barely visible over the wooden rim. He begins to preach, and he doesn't hold back. This is the one time a child can legally scold his elders. He lectures the congregation on their behavior. He tells the parents to be kinder to their children. He tells the schoolmasters to use the birch rod less often, a point that gets a murmur of approval from the other choir boys. He might even take a swipe at the local landlord for his greed, or the actual priests for their laziness. You glance around. The adults are listening, some are smiling, amused by the novelty. Others look a bit uncomfortable, shifting on their feet as this child lists their moral failings with uncomfortable accuracy. It's a comedy, yes, but it's a comedy with teeth. It serves as a safety valve, a way to let off steam and critique authority within a controlled environment so that actual revolution doesn't happen. Historians still argue about whether the church hierarchy genuinely supported this or merely tolerated it as an unavoidable folk custom. Some records show high-ranking clergy leaving generously in their wills for the boy bishop's feast, suggesting they found it charming. Others, particularly later reformers, hated it, calling it a scandalous buffoonery that mocked the sacraments. But right now, in the flickering candlelight, it feels like a magical loophole in reality. The power of the boy bishop is surprisingly real. During his tenure, he can conduct all the ceremonies of the church except the Mass itself. He can bless the people. He can proclaim fasts. In some regions, He even has the right to levy a tax on the wealthy households. You watch as he visits the local manor houses, demanding gifts of money, sweets, and ale for his clergy. If the lord of the manor refuses, the boy bishop can excommunicate him, playfully, of course, but it's bad social optics to be shunned by the Christmas mascot. There is a fascinating, slightly morbid fact that circulates in village gossip. If the boy bishop happens to die while he is in office, during those few weeks of December, he is buried with the full honors of a real bishop. He gets a tomb with a little stone effigy of himself in bishop's robes. You might have seen such a tomb in a cathedral, a small stone figure frozen in eternal prayer, a permanent monument to a temporary power. After the service, the religious veneer drops and the party begins. The boy bishop is paraded through the streets. You join the crowd following him. It's a riot of noise. Drums are beating. People are shouting, "Noel." The boy is handing out boy bishop tokens, cheap lead or pewter coins minted just for the occasion. You scramble in the mud to grab one. It depicts a bishop's head on one side and a cross on the other. It's a souvenir, a lucky charm. You wipe the mud off it and shove it in your pouch. The procession ends at a feast, because everything in the Middle Ages ends at a feast. The boy sits at the head of the table. The real bishop serves him wine. The inversion is complete. You are eating leftover pie, watching a child get drunk on power, and possibly a little bit of watered-down wine. But there is a melancholy undertone to all this. You know, and the boy knows, that this is temporary. On Holy Innocents' Day, the clock will strike midnight on his Cinderella story. The vestments will be put back in the chest. The mitre will be taken away. He will go back to being a choir boy, subject to the cane of the choirmaster, forced to scrub floors and memorize Latin conjugations. This knowledge gives the festivities a frantic edge. The boy is living a lifetime of authority in a fortnight. He orders another song. He demands more pudding. He is milking this for every second it is worth. You find yourself rooting for him. In a life where you have zero social mobility, where you were born a peasant and will die a peasant, watching someone jump the line, even for a joke, is deeply satisfying. It's a reminder that titles and robes are just costumes, and that authority is, to some extent, a performance. As the night winds down, the boy bishop falls asleep in the big chair, his mitre finally slipping off and rolling onto the floor. He looks small again, vulnerable. A servant gently picks him up to carry him to bed. The spell fades. The real world, cold, hard, and strictly ordered, is waiting to snap back into place. But the chaos isn't over yet. The boy bishop was just the warm-up act for the adults. If the children can turn the world upside down, wait until you see what the grown-ups do when they elect the Lord of Misrule. You finish your drink, rub your tired eyes, and prepare for the next level of holiday anarchy. The season is escalating, and the Feast of Fools is on the horizon. The boy bishop has been tucked into bed, his little mitre resting on the nightstand, and the sweet, piping voices of the choir have faded into memory. The candle smoke hangs low in the rafters, forming a blue haze. You might think it's time to sleep, but you'd be dead wrong. The children's hour is over. Now, the adults are taking the stage, and the tone is shifting from charming inversion to riotous anarchy. You hear a crash of cymbals, or perhaps just two pot lids being smashed together, and a figure leaps onto the table. He is wearing a crown made of sausages, or perhaps gilded cardboard. He holds a scepter that is clearly a pig's trotter on a stick. Bells are sewn onto every available inch of his tunic, creating a constant, rhythmic jingle that will haunt your dreams for weeks. Meet the Lord of Misrule. In Scotland, he might be called the Abbot of Unreason. In France, the Prince of Fools. But here, in your English hall, he is the dictator of the party. He is usually a peasant, a servant, or perhaps the village idiot who has been elevated to supreme power for the duration of the festivities. And his word, no matter how ridiculous, is law. The lord of the manor, the actual guy who owns the roof over your head and could have you flogged for poaching a rabbit, stands up. He bows to the sausage-crowned peasant. "Your wish, my lord?" he asks. The Lord of Misrule points a greasy finger at the real lord. "I command you to hop on one leg around the hearth and bark like a dog while you do it." The room holds its breath. This is the moment where the social fabric is stretched to its breaking point. If the Lord refuses, the game fails. But he doesn't refuse. With a good-natured groan, and perhaps a few pints of wine to lubricate his dignity, the lord of the manor lifts one velvet-clad leg and begins to hop, woof, woof. The hall erupts. You are cheering. You are screaming with laughter. Seeing your master, the man who holds the power of life and death over you, acting like a spaniel is the most cathartic experience of your year. It is a safety valve. Historians and anthropologists agree that these rituals were essential for maintaining social stability. By letting the peasants mock the power structure for a few days, the nobility ensured that they wouldn't burn the manor down during the rest of the year. It's a pressure cooker releasing steam. But don't get too comfortable laughing from the sidelines. The Lord of Misrule's eye is roving. He points his pig-trotter scepter at you. "You there, with the face like a stunned mullet, drink this entire flagon of ale without taking a breath. You have no choice. If you refuse the Lord of Misrule, you face the punishments. These aren't jail time, but they are humiliating. You might have your face blackened with soot from the fireplace, a mark of shame and comedy. You might be ducked in a tub of ice-cold water. You might be forced to wear a sign that says, "Grumpy Toad." So you grab the flagon, you tilt your head back, you chug. The ale spills down your chin, soaking your tunic. The crowd chants, clapping in time with your gulps. You slam the empty mug down, gasping for air, eyes watering. The Lord of Misrule cheers and throws a handful of nuts or coins at you. You are now part of his court. The night dissolves into games, and when medieval people say games, they don't mean Scrabble. They mean contact sports played indoors near an open fire. One favorite is hot cockles. It sounds rude. It's actually just violent. One lucky volunteer, the victim, kneels down and buries their face in someone's lap so they can't see. Then, the other players take turns hitting the victim on the back or the bottom. The victim has to guess who hit them. If they guess right, the hitter becomes the victim. If they guess wrong, they get hit again. You watch as the blacksmith winds up for a smack that sounds like a thunderclap. The victim howls. Everyone laughs. It's simple, brutal fun. Then there is Hoodman Blind, the ancestor of Blind Man's Bluff. A player is hoodwinked, blindfolded, and spun around. The other players taunt him, poke him with sticks, or smack him with knotted cloths. He has to catch one of them. In a crowded hall filled with benches, fire pits, and drunk people, this is a recipe for broken shins and singed eyebrows. You dodge out of the way as the blindfolded baker goes crashing into a servant carrying a tray of pies. Splat! The Lord of Misrule declares this the funniest thing he has ever seen and awards the baker a crown of holly, which is sharp, so it's a mixed blessing. There is a game called Shoeing the Wild Mare, which involves balancing on a suspended wooden beam while trying to perform a task, usually resulting in the player falling off in a spectacular heap. It's basically medieval Jackass. As the night wears on, the commands of the Lord of Misrule get weirder. He might order the men to dress as women and the women to dress as men. This cross-dressing is a huge part of the solstice chaos, a complete inversion of the strict gender roles of the time. You might see a burly plowman struggling to lace up a kirtle, while a dairymaid struts around with a sword and a fake beard made of wool. It's a carnival. Reality is suspended. Scholars debate how much of this was genuine subversion. Did the Lord of Misrule ever go too far? Occasionally, yes. There are court records of riots starting because a Lord of Misrule led a mob into town and started breaking actual laws, not just party laws. In 1551, a Lord of Misrule in London marched with a retinue of 100 men, broke into houses, and caused such a disturbance that he was arrested. But usually, it's a controlled burn. The real Lord is paying for the ale, after all. He is funding his own mockery because he knows it buys him loyalty. You are exhausted, your throat hurts from shouting, your stomach is sloshing with ale, your back stings from a round of hot cockles, but you can't stop. The Lord of Misrule is banging a drum. Dance, he commands. You grab a partner, it doesn't matter who. You spin in circles, the floor shake under the stamping of boots. The heat in the hall is tropical. The smell is a pungent mix of sweat, roast meat, and wet dog. The room spins. The colors of the tunics blur into a kaleidoscope. For a moment, you forget everything. You forget the freezing mud of the fields. You forget the tithes you owe the church. You forget that your roof needs thatching. You are lost in the misrule. The world makes no sense, and that is a beautiful thing. Eventually, the Lord of Misrule collapses on his throne, snoring loudly, his sausage crown slipping over one eye. The energy in the room drops. The spell wavers. You stumble back to your bench, gasping. The fire is dying down to red coals. The shadows are lengthening. You look at the sleeping mock king. Tomorrow, or perhaps in a few days when the season ends, he will be cleaning out the stables again. But tonight, he was Caesar, and you were his loyal subject. You lean your head against the wall, the stone cool against your flushed skin. You need fresh air. You need to escape the noise and the madness for just a moment. And tomorrow, the festivities will move outside, away from the suffocating heat of the hall and onto the ice. You close your eyes, listening to the fading jingling of bells, and drift into a doze, dreaming of pigs flying and lords barking. You step out of the great hall, and the contrast is shocking. Inside, the air was a soup of roasting meat, wood smoke, unwashed bodies, and spilled ale, heated to a tropical temperature by the roaring fire and the crush of the crowd. Outside, the air is diamond clear, odorless, and sharp enough to freeze the hairs inside your nose instantly. It is the kind of cold that wakes you up better than any caffeine. The hangover from the Lord of Misrule's party is slapped out of your system by the sheer, brutal honesty of the winter landscape. It is mid-afternoon, but the sun is already sinking, casting long, pale shadows across the snow. You are heading toward the low-lying fields beyond the village, the fens, the marshes, or perhaps the stagnant mill pond. In the summer, this is a mosquito-infested swamp where you lose your boots in the mud. But now, after weeks of hard frost, it has transformed. It is a vast, flat sheet of white and gray. It is the medieval ice rink. You aren't here to play hockey, you are here to skate. But before you picture yourself doing a triple axel or gliding gracefully on razor-sharp steel blades, you need to adjust your expectations. You are holding your skates in your hands, and they look like the remains of a very successful barbecue. These are bone skates. Specifically, they are the metapodials, the cannon bones, of a horse or a cow. They have been boiled clean, stripped of meat, and the bottom side has been filed down and polished with animal fat until it is as smooth as glass. This is recycling at its finest. You don't go to a sporting goods store, you go to the butcher or the knacker's yard. You sit down on the frozen bank, the cold seeping through your wool hose immediately. You fumble with the attachment. There are no fancy ratchet straps here. You have drilled a hole in the front and the back of the bone. You thread leather thongs through these holes and tie the bone directly to the sole of your soft leather boot. There is no ankle support. There is no stiff plastic boot. It is just your foot, a piece of dead animal, and a prayer. You stand up. It feels weird. You are essentially balancing on two rolling pins. Unlike modern steel skates, which have edges that bite into the ice and allow you to push off to the side, bone skates have zero grip. If you try to push off like a modern skater, you will simply do the splits and pull a groin muscle that medicine won't know how to fix for another 500 years. To move, you need a third piece of equipment, the pole. It's a stout wooden staff, sometimes tipped with an iron spike if you're fancy. You use it like a punter on a river or a skier. You plant the pole between your feet, shove it into the ice, and push yourself forward. Scritch, scritch, slide. The sound is hollow and scraping. You build up momentum. Because the bone is greased and the ice is hard, the friction is surprisingly low. You start to glide. It's not the graceful carving motion of modern skating. It's a straight line locomotive chug. You plant, push, and zoom forward. The sensation is exhilarating. In a world where the fastest you usually travel is walking speed or bumpy ox cart speed, this feels like flying. You are skimming over the surface of the world. The wind rushes past your ears, stinging your cheeks. You look down. The ice isn't the smooth, Zamboni-polished surface of a climate-controlled arena. It is wild ice. It is full of trapped air bubbles that look like suspended pearls. There are frozen weeds sticking up that you have to dodge. There are ripples where the wind caught the water as it froze. It is a texture, a landscape in itself. You aren't alone out here. The frozen marsh is the medieval playground. You see children sliding on sleds, which are just jawbones of horses or large chunks of ice. They scream and laugh, their breath puffing out in little white clouds. Then there are the young bucks, the teenagers and apprentices who are full of testosterone and bad ideas. You watch two of them speeding toward each other from opposite ends of the pond. They have their poles raised like lances. This isn't just skating, this is ice jousting. The 12th century writer William Fitzstephen described this exact scene in London. Some stride as wide as they may, do run one against another, and lift up their staves, and tilt one at the other, and at this meeting one or both do fall, not without some bodily hurt. He wasn't kidding. You watch as they collide. Crack. It's the sound of wood on wood, or maybe wood on shin. One of them goes down hard. Medieval ice is unforgiving. There are no pads. If you hit your head, you simply have a concussion and a story. The fallen skater slides across the ice on his back, spinning like a top, while his friends howl with laughter. He gets up, rubbing his elbow, grinning through the pain. It's a rough, raw kind of joy. Historians still argue about the primary purpose of bone skates. Were they invented purely for this kind of leisure, a way to pass the idle winter hours? Or were they a serious technological adaptation for transport? Some archaeologists suggest that in the fenlands of England or the frozen canals of the Netherlands, bone skates were a vital tool for getting from village to village when the roads were impassable mud. It's the debate between skating for fun and skating to survive. As you struggle to keep your balance, you suspect it was a bit of both. Why walk 5 miles around the marsh when you can pull yourself across it in 20 minutes? You find your rhythm. Plant, push, glide. You venture further out, away from the noisy jousters. The silence of the winter landscape wraps around you. The only sound is the thump hiss of your skates and the wind in the dried reeds at the edge of the marsh. There is a sense of precariousness that makes you feel vividly alive. You know that the ice is a living thing. It groans. It cracks. A sudden, deep bowing sound echoes through the ice sheet, a thermal expansion crack. It sounds like a laser blaster from a sci-fi movie. Your heart skips a beat. You freeze, waiting to see if you are going to plunge into the freezing black water below. The ice holds. You breathe out. The danger is part of the appeal. You notice the wear on your equipment. The leather straps are digging into your instep, cutting off circulation. Your toes are numb blocks of wood. But you don't want to stop. There is something hypnotic about the motion. You are a water strider, defying the laws of physics that say humans should sink. The sun begins to dip below the horizon, turning the sky into a bruise of purple and orange. The ice reflects the colors, glowing with a strange internal light. The temperature drops another 5 degrees instantly. The sweat you worked up under your wool tunic starts to turn cold and clammy. It's time to head back. You turn around. Using your pole to awkwardly steer, bone skates don't have a turning radius. You just sort of shove yourself in a new direction. You make your way back to the bank. Untying the skates is a nightmare. The leather thongs are wet and frozen stiff. You have to pick at the knots with numb fingers, cursing softly. Finally, the bones clatter to the ground. You step onto the earth. You feel heavy. The magical friction-free world is gone, replaced by the drag of gravity and mud. You pick up your skates, wiping the slush off the bone. They are polished even smoother now. You'll hang them by the fire to dry, ready for tomorrow. You trudge back toward the village. The windows of the cottages are glowing orange squares in the gathering dark. You can smell wood smoke again. You are tired in a good way, the physical exhaustion of fresh air and exercise, not the sluggish fatigue of the feast. Your legs ache from the strange muscles you used to balance. But as you walk, you hear a distant shouting from the orchard. The skating is done, but the rituals aren't. The sun has set, which means the wassailers are waking up. You grab your skates tighter and pick up the pace. You need to thaw your toes, grab a hot drink, and get ready to yell at some trees. The apple harvest depends on it. You have barely had time to thaw your frozen toes by the fire after your ice skating expedition when the call comes. It is time to head back out into the dark. But this time, you aren't going to the church, and you aren't going to the frozen pond. You are going to the orchard. It is arguably the strangest, most primal night of the entire Christmas season. You are going wassailing. Now, you might know the word wassail from the carol Here We Come a Wassailing, which sounds like a polite door-to-door singing service. But the original practice, the agricultural wassail, is something else entirely. It is a drunken, noisy, superstitious attempt to bully nature into cooperating. You grab a torch, a piece of wood dipped in pitch or animal fat, and light it from the hearth. The sudden flare of orange light blinds you for a second. You join a group of neighbors gathering outside. They look like a mob. Some are carrying sticks. Some are carrying old pots and ladles. One man, the designated leader or butler, is carrying the wassail bowl. This bowl is a thing of beauty. It's massive, carved from maple or ash, and filled to the brim with a steaming concoction. It's likely lamb's wool again, that hot cider or ale with roasted crab apples, spices, and sugar, or perhaps a lethal mix of beer, sherry, and beaten eggs. It smells incredible, a cloud of cinnamon and nutmeg drifting through the freezing night air. You trudge through the snow toward the apple orchard. The trees stand in silent rows, their twisted, bare branches looking like gnarled hands reaching for the moon. In the flickering torchlight, they look alive, and in the medieval mind, they sort of are. You believe these trees have spirits. You believe they can hear you, and you believe that if you don't treat them right tonight, they will punish you with a terrible harvest next autumn. The procession stops at the biggest, oldest, most gnarled apple tree in the orchard. This is the apple tree man, the guardian of the grove. The crowd forms a circle around it. The snow is trampled down by dozens of boots. The ritual begins. It is a piece of sympathetic magic that predates Christianity by centuries, though the local priest probably turns a blind eye to it because he likes cider as much as anyone else. First, the offering. The butler steps forward and lifts the heavy wassail bowl. He takes a drink, wipes his mouth, and then, with a solemnity that borders on comedy, he pours a generous splash of the hot, sticky alcohol onto the roots of the tree. You watch the steam rise as the warm cider hits the frozen earth. You are literally getting the tree drunk. The idea is that the alcohol will warm the roots and encourage the sap to rise in the spring. But the tree needs food, too. You watch as pieces of toast, bread that has been soaked in the wassail bowl until it is a soggy, alcoholic sponge, are placed in the forks of the branches. This is, quite literally, where the term proposing a toast comes from. You are toasting the tree. The sop is an offering to the robins or the spirits of the wood, asking them to protect the buds from frost and pests. Then comes the noise. In the medieval world, evil spirits are cowardly things. They hate loud noises, so, on a signal, everyone goes berserk. You start banging your stick against the trunk of the tree. You clash your pot lids together. You shout. You whistle. Men might fire crude muskets or blunderbusses into the air. If we are in the later medieval, early modern transition, the flash of gunpowder lighting up the skeletal branches. It is a cacophony. Bang! Clatter! Shout! You are waking the tree up. You are shouting, "Hey, winter is halfway done. Get ready to grow." Then the chanting starts. It's a rough, rhythmic song, bellowed into the darkness. Here's to thee, old apple tree, whence thou mayst bud, and whence thou mayst blow, and whence thou mayst bear apples enow. Hats full, caps full, bushel sacks full, and my pockets full too. Huzzah! You scream huzzah until your throat is raw. You grab a branch and shake it, physically trying to rattle the dormancy out of the wood. Historians still argue about the precise lineage of this ritual, whether it is a direct survival of the Roman feast of Pomona, the goddess of fruit trees, or a purely Anglo-Saxon invention. The word wassail comes from the Old English wise hail, meaning be whole or be healthy. It was originally a greeting, a toast to a person. But out here in the dark, you are toasting the livelihood of the village. No apples means no cider. No cider means drinking water. And in the Middle Ages, drinking water is often a one-way ticket to dysentery. So, the stakes are actually quite high. The bowl is passed around the circle. It is a communal cup. You take a swig. The hot liquid burns your throat in a pleasant way, spreading warmth through your chest. It tastes of roasted apples and earth. You pass it to your neighbor. Germ theory is, once again, happily ignored. There is a moment of eerie beauty in the midst of the shouting. You look up through the branches of the apple tree man. The toast is sitting there, steaming slightly. The snow is falling softly, catching in the torchlight. You feel a deep connection to the land. You aren't just a farmer exploiting the soil. You are in a partnership with it. You feed the tree feeds you. It's a transactional relationship sealed with cider. But it's also a party. The wassailing often moves from the orchard to the fields, or from house to house. In some traditions, if you are visiting a neighbor, you expect to be let in and fed. If they refuse, the song gets nasty. There are verses that threaten to curse the house or steal the chickens if the wassailers aren't given their due. It's the trick part of trick or treat, but with grown men and heavy sticks. You find yourself stumbling through the snow to the next tree and the next. The cold is forgotten. The alcohol and the exertion keep you warm. You are part of a roving band of benevolent hooligans, shouting at vegetation. There is a legend that on this night, often Old Twelfth Night, January 17th in the old calendar, or sometimes Christmas Eve, the farm animals gain the power of speech. As you walk back past the barn, you might pause and listen. Can you hear the oxen murmuring? Can you hear the sheep debating theology? Most people are too afraid to listen. The legend says that hearing the animals talk brings terrible luck, usually death. It's a classic medieval double-bind. A miracle is happening in your barn, but if you witness it, you die. Best to stay outside and stick to yelling at the apple trees. As the bowl runs dry and the torches burn down to sputtering stubs, the adrenaline fades. You are left standing in a dark, quiet orchard that smells of gunpowder and spilled ale. The trees stand silent again, holding their soggy toast in the branches like strange ornaments. You head back to the warmth of the cottage, your boots crunching on the packed snow. The wassail is done. You have done your duty. The harvest is secured, hopefully. But the season is drawing to a close. The 12 days are counting down. You have feasted, fasted, prayed, skated, and shouted. There is only one final hurdle left. The grand finale. The night that marks the end of the holiday and the return to the grindstone. You need to prepare your stomach and your liver for one last blast. The Feast of the Epiphany, 12th night, is coming, and it brings with it the king of the bean. You are staring at a cake the size of a shield. It is the evening of January 5th, 12th night, and the grand finale of the Christmas season has arrived. You are tired. Your liver is questioning your life choices. You have spent nearly 2 weeks eating rich food, drinking spiced ale, and watching your neighbors act like lunatics. But you have to rally one last time, because the 12th cake is about to be cut, and the fate of the evening rests inside its dense, fruity interior. This isn't a fluffy sponge cake. It is a heavy, yeasted fruit cake, dark with spices and sticky with honey. But the ingredients aren't the point. The hidden payload is. Baked somewhere inside this massive pastry is a single dried bean. In some households, there is also a dried pea. The rules are simple but high stakes. The cake is sliced and distributed. Everyone at the table, men, women, children, servants, gets a piece. You hold your slice, feeling its weight. You break it open carefully. You aren't just looking for a snack, you are looking for a promotion. If you find the bean, you are the king of the bean for the night. If a woman finds it, or the pea, she is the queen. It doesn't matter if you are the lowest stable boy who spends his days shoveling manure. If you have the bean, the lord of the manor has to obey you. It is the final burst of misrule, the last gasp of the topsy-turvy world before reality comes crashing back down. You chew cautiously. You don't want to be the guy who swallows the symbol of monarchy and has to explain where it went. Suddenly, a shout goes up from the end of the table. A plowman holds up the bean, grinning through a mouthful of crumbs. The room erupts. He is crowned, usually with a paper crown or a wreath of ivy. Now begins the drinking game to end all drinking games. The Bean King is elevated to a throne. Every time he lifts his cup to take a drink, the entire company must shout, "The king drinks," and take a drink themselves. If you fail to shout it, or if you drink out of turn, you are fined, usually by having your face blackened with soot or being forced to drink salt water. It is a chaotic, noisy, desperate kind of fun. You shout, "The king drinks," until your voice is hoarse. You are wringing the last drops of joy out of the season. Historians still argue about whether the Bean King tradition is a direct descendant of the Roman Saturnalia king, the Saturnalicious princeps, or a medieval French invention that crossed the channel. But as you watch the plowman stagger around wearing a paper crown, the academic lineage feels less important than the immediate reality of the hangover you are building for tomorrow. Because lurking behind this party is a dark, looming shadow, Plow Monday. The first Monday after Epiphany is the official return to work. The holiday is over. The St. Distaff's Day, January 7th, will signal the women returning to their spinning, and Plow Monday signals the men returning to the fields. The dream state of the 12 days, where labor was suspended and food was plentiful, is about to be shattered by the cold, gray dawn of agricultural necessity. This knowledge gives the 12th night party a frantic energy. You are eating the cake not just for pleasure, but to fuel up for the lean months ahead. You are drinking the ale because soon it will be back to water and small beer. As the night winds down, you face the final ritual, the undecorating. There is a very specific, very spooky superstition about the greenery you dragged in on Christmas Eve. You look at the holly and ivy decking the halls. They are dry now, brown and brittle. The berries are shriveled. You must take them down, all of them. If you leave a single sprig of Christmas holly in the house after 12th night, or, depending on your local tradition, after Candlemas on February 2nd, you are inviting disaster. The belief is that for every leaf left up, a goblin or a sprite will infest your house. The greenery, which provided a sanctuary for the good spirits during the holy days, turns sour. It becomes a trap. So, you help pull down the garlands. The dry leaves crumble in your hands. Dust motes dance in the dying firelight. You don't just throw them in the trash, you burn them. You feed the dry holly to the fire. It crackles and snaps, a miniature fireworks display. It smells of scorched pine and old memories. You are literally burning the holiday. You are purifying the house, resetting the clock. The great hall looks naked without the decorations. The stone walls seem colder, the corners darker. The magic has been stripped away, leaving only the mundane reality of a drafty house in the middle of winter. You go to bed late, your head spinning from the king's drinks, but sleep is fitful. You know that before the sun rises, the bailiff will be banging on the door. Morning comes too soon. It is Plough Monday. The transition is brutal. You drag yourself out of the warmth of the furs. You put on your work tunic, which feels stiff and cold. You grab your tools. But even the return to work has a touch of the medieval flair for drama. You and the other men drag a plow, often decorated with ribbons, a sad echo of the party, through the village. You shout for plow money from the wealthy houses to fund a final tavern ale. It's a reluctance to let go, a final drag of the heels before the yoke settles on your shoulders. You walk out into the field. The ground is frozen hard. The sky is a flat, unyielding gray. The feast is a memory. The flavor of the boar's head, the heat of the wassail, the terror of the mummers, it all feels like a vivid dream. You grip the handles of the plow. The wood is rough against your calloused palms. You look at the horizon. The winter is far from over. February and March, the hungry gap, are waiting. But you have survived the darkest point. You have turned the corner of the year. The sun is technically coming back, minute by minute. You have filled your belly, strengthened your social bonds, and honored the spirits. You shout to the oxen. The plow bites into the frosty earth with a crunch. The work begins. The wheel turns. And somewhere, deep in the soil, the apple trees are drinking the cider you gave them, and the wheat is waiting to grow. You push forward, your breath pluming in the cold air, walking steadily into the new year. Now, let the image of the frozen field fade. Let the crunch of the plow and the shouting of the villagers drift away on the wind, becoming softer and softer until they are just a whisper. You are no longer standing in the cold medieval mud. You are back in your own time, in your own warm sanctuary. The heavy wool tunic is gone, replaced by your soft blankets. The biting draft of the cottage is gone, replaced by the gentle, steady warmth of your room. Take a deep breath. Inhale the stillness of the present moment. The frantic energy of the feast, the bright lights of the candles, and the noise of the great hall have all dissolved into the quiet of the night. Think back on the journey we took. We shivered through the dark of Advent, waiting for the light. We dragged the great Yule Log through the snow and felt the heat of its fire. We smelled the sharp, green scent of the holly and the ivy. We tasted the rich spices of the boar's head and the sweetness of the roasted apples. We watched the mummers dance in their strange masks and saw the boy bishop take his throne. All those moments are preserved in the amber of history safe and distant. They are stories now, drifting through the corridors of time. You don't have to work the fields tomorrow. You don't have to worry about the winter stores or the drafty walls. Your only task now is to rest. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the mattress, just as the Yule log settled into the embers. Let your muscles uncoil. The fire is banked. The house is swept clean. The spirits have been appeased. The year has turned. The darkness outside is not a threat. It is a blanket, wrapping you in safety. The silence is not empty. It is peaceful. Let the long centuries of history stand guard over your sleep. The past is at rest, and now, so are you. Drift away from the hall, away from the snow, into the deep velvet quiet of your own dreams. Good night.